we must submit the assignment. I think by this time everybody might have already completed the assignments, right? So those assignments is to be submitted, and this objective test is already corrected and everything has been done, right? So this is the last topic that is remained in our fifth unit. Let us finish off the fifth unit first, and later part we will go for discussing about the question bank, whatever we have, that question bank and the questions which is going to appear for the examinations. Those things we will go for discussing in the later part. Let us start discussing about the fuel cells, which was what we already discussed previously regarding the electrochemical process. How the same fuel cells process we have discussed in the hydrogen production. The same working principle, the same process and everything we are going to discuss once again here. So if you prepare for the fuel cells, or if you prepare well for hydrogen production, electrolysis process production, so both the things it's going to be same, one and the same. Okay. See, in the if you remember one important point regarding the hydrogen production, when we were discussing in the hydrogen productions last two classes back, we have seen in the electrolysis process at one end nothing but anode and cathode. Normally we are going to have at one end. Naturally, it's going to be at anode part. We are going to have the hydrogen production, as well as if I consider at cathode part where we are going to produce the oxygen. So both the things, hydrogen and oxygen, both the things we are producing there in the electrolysis process. There was a one method what we used for the production of the hydrogen. That's what we did previously also. Now let me go for saying, if you remember the fuel cells part is considered. Now let us go for seeing these particular things, please. The things what we have already seen in the electrolysis process. If you are remembering the total process, whatever we have discussed in the last two sessions. So the first and foremost things, it's consisting of a case. So where we are observing the case here, and inside that we are going to have two more things, what we call the electrodes. So one electrode we are going to call that as an anode, and second electrode we call that as a cathode part. Now at the starting point, in between the connections is going to be done between the anode and cathode in a two-way. One is an external connection and second one is an internal connection. See, in the external connections, if you remember it, we are going to have, it is done with the help of separate wires. And of course, this is going to be connected with your load. If you can observe it in the figure also, see here the total case we have, and we have another two electrodes here. One is anode and second one is a cathode electrodes. What we are observing it. Cathode will always be represented by plus and anode is always represented by minus here. And now these two things are connected for completing of the circuit. Whenever you are going to find the circuit completion, then only electricity will flow. Now for doing that, you always see that the cathode and anode, both the things is needed to be connected with an external load by an external circuit, what we call external circuit. So this is connected out. Now inside of this particular thing, second side of this anode and cathode, it is connected by an electrolyte. See, most of the times these electrolytes may vary depending upon the type of applications what we are going to have it. So most of the cases for the easy transfer, we always prefer to use it KOH. So what we call the potassium hydroxide. This is a solution what we are going to use it, which is going to act like a membrane here, which allows the membrane, which allows the ions in only one direction. So that way we are going to have this electrolyte here. So this KOH is an electrolyte, what we are going to have it here. This is indicating the two electrodes, one is an anode and second one is a cathode. These two electrodes, one is plus and second one is minus. These two things are just connected with the help of two circuits. One is an external circuit, what we are observing it, which is connected outside with the help of a wire. The second one is connected in with the help of a solution. With the help of this way, you are going to find the complete circuit has been completed, and now you can expect certain amount of electron flow or current flow can be happened here, right? So this is the way how the circuit will be there. Now let us go for say the electrolyte, whatever we are going to use it as a potassium hydroxide. Now when we are seeing this, what type of reactions is going to happen? So the first reaction will start with from the anode part. Whenever we are going to find the anode part, here at the starting point where we are going to observe it, the water content is going to react. Now if the first content is the water content, now it is going to be separated both. Naturally I'll start with the cathode part where we are going to find. Now at one point we are going to consider the water content where we are going to observe it. It is going to be divided. This water is a combination of two ions. One is H plus ion, second one is a OH minus ions. Now when we are observing it H and OH ions, you are going to see that H plus ions and OH minus ions, it is separating with the two things, H plus and OH minus ions. Now when we are considering these particular things, you are going to find four type of electrons are going to come out. And now these four electrons, whenever we are going to coming out of that, now these four electrons are going to move from this part in the external circuit. It's going to move through the external circuit. Now what is remained here? In the electrolyte, we are going to find only H plus ions. Only H plus ions is remained. When we are saying that H plus ions are remained, and this H plus ions is going to see that it's going to move towards one anode part. It's going to move towards the anode part. Wherever we are going to find that anode part here, when it is moving towards the anode part, only H plus ions is going to move. Now at the same time, the electrons, whatever it was produced at the cathode part, is going to come to the anode through an external circuit. Now it is indicating by the time the electrons from cathode reaches to the anode part through an external circuit, these H plus ions are also going to move from the cathode to the anode through the electrolyte. Now at this particular point, the anode part where we are going to observe it, two important things, H plus ions. At the same time, electrons are also going to come. At the anode part, both the things are going to interact, and we are going to convert that into the hydrogen content. Now the hydrogen is going to come out. In the similar process, you are going to find, see, oxygen also going to come out from the cathode part. So this way, both the things is going to operate here. Right? So you can find the solution, you can find the chemical reactions which is going to happen here in the anode as well as in the cathode conditions. Now how the electrolyte is going to be useful, that is also given in the reactions. See, whenever we are going to see this question appears like a fuel cells, right, about the short nodes on the fuel cells like this if appears. So if the question is for 10 marks, the chemical reactions itself is going to take 2 marks, and the figure whatever we are going to find, it takes 2 marks. The remaining working whatever we are going to write comes under the 6 marks question, 6 marks, right? So don't miss the figure, don't miss the particularly the chemical reactions. So this is the way how we are going to find it. So the fuel cells here. Now if I see that what advantages I have with the fuel cells. See, the first and foremost advantage is it is going to be more efficient than the diesel engines. Especially when we were discussing about the petrol engines or diesel engines here, we always see one important thing here. We always see The petrol and diesel engines efficiency is lesser. Its efficiency is going to be always 30% to 35%. Whereas if I say that fuel cells efficiency, it reaches to 60 to 70% here. Nothing but more or less, it's going to be the double time of that. That was an advantage what we have with this particular this particular fuel cells. Now when we are observing it, so this doesn't find many number of components here. When we are observing it for engines, where we are going to have the piston, cylinder arrangements, and each and everything, it is going to be there many number of components or always be there for the engines. So you are always going to expect certain amount of noise, as well as you always expect certain amount of pollutions also. We already discussed about the pollutions which was created by the engines. Especially when we are going for the engine part is considered, you are going to find NOx emissions, HC emissions, CO emissions, CO2 emissions. Now two important things. One, when we are using the engine, the cost of the fuel is increasing, the emissions are also going to increase, and it is going to create the sound. And at the same time, many number of components are there. Operation is also going to be difficult. Now, when we are going for the fuel cells, where we are not going to identify any type of fuel, any type of components. Here we are identifying only the components or the electrodes, only the wires and the electrolytes. Only these are the things which is going to be available with us. So there is no question of moving components. When I'm saying that no moving components, so the operation is always going to be silent, right? So operation is silent, no questions here. Now as I'm using it only the water content, only water content we are using for producing hydrogen and oxygen content. Now we are seeing that there will not be any type of emissions at all. No NOx, no CO, CO2, no HC emissions. So when I'm saying that it doesn't find any emissions, it is going to be environmental friendly part. We can consider it is going to be environmental friendly. When I'm saying that it doesn't depend on the fuel, whether it doesn't need any petrol, diesel, kerosene or something else, you always consider it is going to be friendly part, environmental friendly. And the cost of importing of the fuel is also going to be reduced, right? That is a major advantage what we have. Now, when we were discussing in the last sessions regarding the wind power generations, we have identified one important factor which is going to be considered for the site selections. The first and foremost important thing is it should be nearer to the grid. Why it is nearer for the grid? The important things, whatever the amount of power we are producing, this amount of power we need to supply to the grid so that it can be transported, because the storing capacity of these particular things is going to be lesser. Right? That was a basic problem what we are facing with the wind turbines. Now let us come to this particular things where we are observing it, where it doesn't find any type of fuels at all. So it is going to be generating only the hydrogen content. So what we can see this, I don't want any type of grid connections here, please. No grid connections. When I'm saying that no grid connections, it is a grid independent here. It doesn't need to depend on the grid. So wherever you want, you can do it. Wherever you want, you can do it. Nothing but it can be decentralized. Previously, when we were discussing about the wind turbines, where the wind turbines cannot be kept wherever you want. You need to take it many number of components. The more amount of air should be there. It should be nearer to the grid. So many number. But now at present, this doesn't have that much problem here. That problem is not going to be there. Right? So this further it is going to have many number of applications like a military applications. So where you are going to need higher amount of energy consumptions, wherever you are going to find, this will be always be used. I can consider the maintenance cost is always going to be less. Why the maintenance cost is less? So you can always consider maintenance cost is lesser when you are going to identify the many number of moving components. If it is lesser, maintenance is lesser, right? That was an advantage what we have with this. So moving components are not there here now. So it's consisting of only the electrodes, electrolyte and a wire connections. So as it doesn't find much number of components, so no moving components, no maintenance at all now, right? So if you are observing it carefully, when I'm comparing the fuel cells with the batteries here, see, when I'm saying that fuel cells, the fuel cells, it always going to say that hydrogen content each and every time the amount of energy is going to be liberated here. As the amount of energy is liberating, you can see this is going to work for longer amount of time when we are comparing with the batteries also. That's why you can see this particular fuel cells is going to have it many number of applications, many number of advantages when we are comparing with the diesel engines, when we are comparing with your existing batteries or something else. That was the major advantages what we have with this, right? Now, what disadvantages we have here now? Let me see these disadvantages. One important thing in the last session when we were discussing about the production and the storage of hydrogen, we discussed one important thing. Hydrogen storage is going to be difficult. Hydrogen storage is going to be difficult, right? Nothing but after the production of the hydrogen, maybe the production cost of the hydrogen is small, but storing of the hydrogen itself is going to be too much cost. That's why this fuel cells is going to be expensive one. Fuel cells is going to be more expensive because hydrogen cost is more. That's why we'll say that fuel cells cost is also going to be more, right? Now, important things, if you are observing it carefully, here we are going to have it two things. Hydrogen is coming one side and oxygen is also going to come one side. When I'm talking about hydrogen content, so storing of the hydrogen is going to be difficult here. You cannot store it. That's because in the last sessions we have discussed about the storage of hydrogen. Different methods are there. What methods? So it can be stored either in the gaseous form, liquid form, or as a solid form, right? So in any one of these methods, storing is becoming something difficult for everybody now. Nothing but infrastructure needed for the storing of the hydrogen is becoming difficult. So we need to develop our own infrastructure once again here. That was another problem. Why this hydrogen content is going to be that much problematic? It's highly flammable content. If it is coming out, just like our LPG gas, it is going to be highly flammable, right? So because these are the basic disadvantages what we have. Of course, the scientists now they are going in the process of avoiding of all these components here. Whatever we are observing it, all these things will be avoided now. Within the short amount of time, you can able to overcome all the problems. And once you are overcoming all the problems, it is going to be much more advantageous for you. That was the things regarding the fuel cells, right? So please, everybody, please prepare well for the fuel cells, please. Fuel cells. This question is very important question. Many number of times this fuel cells question is appearing here, right? Last and final topic what we have is a hybrid systems here. It's a very simple. Very simple. Suppose if you are observing it in your house, in most of the times you are using electricity for running of fans, lights and everything here. Now what we are doing, in additional, we can expect certain amount of power failure will always be there. Power failure will always be there. When I'm saying that power failure will always be there, so we need certain additional alternative part here. What alternate we normally prefer? We are preferring an inverter here. An inverter. Now, your house is running with two sources. One is it is running with electricity. Second one, it is running with a inverter. What you call these two things? One is a primary, second one is an additional one. We call this particular setup is called hybrid systems here. Whenever for a power source, if you are using two type of power sources, we call that as hybrid systems. It may be two or it may be three or nothing but what we call it is a more than one. It is more than one. So this is called hybrid power systems. Now in our total syllabus, we have discussed many number of resources here. We have discussed about the solar part, we have discussed about the wind part, we discussed about the biogas, biomass content, we discussed about the ocean technologies, wind power, tidal power, geothermal power. Finally, we have discussed about the hydrogen production, fuel cells, each and everything we have discussed many numbers. If you are preferring any more than one resources, we call that as a hybrid system. Let us take an example here. In the present figure, whatever I observed it, I have shown you two important things, solar and wind content. We are going to generate the power from the solar with the help of the PV modules. The second one, with the help of the wind turbine, we are generating the power here. Both the power we are going to supply to a regulatory authorities where we are going to convert, we are going to regulate towards your applications. Right? So either it can be stored in your batteries or it can be stored to your household applications, or it can be supplied to households, or it can be supplied to your industries or anything. We can do it. Now we can have a doubt why we need two. Why can't it be solar part, or why can't we depend on the wind part? See, in the solar part, if you are using it, solar energy, maybe it is free, maybe it is going to have it many number of applications, many number of advantages. You are going to have it one basic disadvantage. You cannot expect the solar power continuously 24 hours. It cannot be done. At the same time, the solar energy is not going to be available 365 days. Example, you can take it in rainy seasons, where you are going to find it more number of clouds will be there. When I am finding more clouds, naturally what happens? So the radiation which is falling directly onto the earth will not be taken place. Nothing but beam radiation, whatever the radiation which is falling straight away on the earth is called beam radiation. That is not going to fall. So another thing what it is, another type of radiation is diffused radiation. The radiation will be falling on your clouds, and from the clouds it is going to be reflected onto the earth. What you call diffused radiations. But of course, when we are comparing direct radiations and diffused radiations will always be lesser in size. It always be lesser in size. When I'm saying that it is lesser in size, it always be lesser in size. You can see this, you cannot go for depending on the solar energies 365 days. Now what we can see, you can have it out. Now why can't we depend on the wind part? Why can't we depend on the wind? Yes, you can depend on the wind. But only one condition, you cannot expect the wind also going to be there 24 hours, 365 days continuously. In some of the times, the wind is going to be very high. In some of the times, the wind is going to be lesser. So it is indicating the wind energy is not going to be constant at all. Nothing but the energy, whatever you are going to generate from the wind is also not going to be constant at all. It also varies. At some times it is going to be more, at some times it is going to be less. Now what's our problem? If we only depends on the wind energies, you cannot supply the power continuously to the applications. If you depend only on the solar part, there also you cannot go for supply the energies completely. You cannot do it. That's why what we need two type of resources. We need two type of resources here. So the first resource, maybe you can do it in summer conditions. Whenever you are going to find in the winter conditions where the production is not possible, electricity production is not possible, in that case you can use the wind turbine part. When wind turbine is not working, you can use the solar part. That way, it is going to be hybrid system play. What you call, this is going to be hybrid system, combination of these two things. You can do any other things also. Solar, wind, you can take it. Or you can take it solar and your biogas, or solar and as well as the geothermal energies, or solar and the other type of ocean thermal energies. You can take any other things, but you can take it more than one in a system. If you are finding more than one power systems, you can say that this is called hybrid systems place. Right? So now what advantages I have here? One advantage, there will not be any power fluctuations. The power will be continuously supplied. Power supply will always be continuous, because when one is not working, second one will come into the picture. Just like in our house also, where you are seeing this continuously, when the electricity is there, the power supply is continuous. When the electricity is gone, so immediately inverter is going to supply power for you. So nothing but the power supply will always be there continuous, because you in your house also you are depending on the hybrid systems, right? So the other advantages here, if I am considering your system, we are using only on solar and wind part. Both the things, as it is a renewable resources, you see that you are using renewable resources where it doesn't produce any pollutions at all. So that way it is going to be more advantageous. Now when I'm saying that it depends on the solar and wind part, maintenance is also going to be less, because for a solar part where you can see this maintenance is lesser, it's consisting of only solar panels here. Where as it is consisting of solar panel, it doesn't consisting of any moving components. When no moving components, the efficiency will be more as usual, and maintenance will always be lesser. That was an advantage what we have here. Now, high efficiency, I told you just now, as it is depends on the two things, the efficiency of the system is always going to be higher. Right? Another important thing is load management. Load management, because whenever you are going to say that anything, the starting is always going to be difficult. You can take one example here, like your wind turbines. So as the wind turbine blades are heavyweight, but for a smaller amount of energies, the starting is going to be difficult here. The starting rotation is going to be difficult. Of course, once if it is started, it is becoming rolling friction, so it is going to rotate. Now, because of this particular reason, whenever your wind turbine blades are not rotating, so what you can do, you can supply from the solar part whatever the energy we have for rotation, starting part only now. That it can be done. That is another advantages whatever we have here. Now, what is the difficulties here? Of course, there is always be some difficulties. One is a complicated controlling here, because the energies whatever we are going to get it from the wind turbine is going to be different from the energies whatever we are going to get it from the solar part is going to be different. Both the things are different here. Nothing but the controlling process is going to be difficult. Right? And another one, high installation cost. Instead of using only one type of resources, when we are preferring to use two type of resources, the installation cost is going to be more. So we need to incur lot amount of money towards this particular things. Towards this particular things, we need to have it lot amount of money. We need to invest it. We need to see solar plant. We need to have solar panels. We need to take it. The wiring connections and everything. We need to take it. Regulators. We need to take it. As well as the wind part is also the same thing now. All the setup we need to take it. That's why we'll say that installation cost of these particular things is going to be very high. Now we'll see that battery life is also going to be lesser because we are not storing much amount of energy in the battery here. Another important thing is as the number of systems is increasing gradually, we always consider many number of new instruments is always needed for new setups. If I'm depending on only the solar part, the number of components needed is lesser. When we are depending on only the wind part, the number of components are going to be less. But when we are considering, if we are depending both the things, the number of components are going to be more. That is the disadvantages what we have here, right? So these are the things what we have for our total 5-unit syllabus what we have, right? So from the next sessions onwards, we are going to start from the question bank, the important questions, what it is going to appear. Each day we are going to discuss about 1 unit, the questions, answers and everything, how we need to write, what to concentrate. Those things we are going to discuss in the coming part, right? Up to this now, the 5th unit, let me see in a brief way whatever I discussed. Let me go for discussing now with 1 minute. See, in the 5th unit, we have discussed other type of resources because when we started our syllabus, at the first unit, we started discussing about the introduction part, disadvantages of conventional fuels, advantages of non-conventional fuels, types of non-conventional, those things we have discussed. And from the 2nd unit onwards, we started discussing about each and every non-conventional energy resources individually. Nothing but we started discussing about the solar part in the 2nd unit. In the 3rd unit, we discussed about the wind part is considered. And in the 4th unit, we discussed about many important things like a biomass. And the amount of resources, what it is going to depend on the biomass also we have started discussing. So in that comes under the fermentation process we have discussed, and we have discussed about the biogas content, how we are going to generate the biogas, with what type of instruments we are going to use it. Those things we have discussed. And later part we discussed about, after the biogas considered, we discussed about the ethanol productions, because ethanol production, ethanol is also going to be a byproduct from the biomass only. So the biomass what we are using is a bagasse part. So from there where we are going to use it, that, so that what we have discussed. Later part we discussed about the ethanol and the biodiesel productions we have discussed. So these are the things what we discussed in the 4th unit. Now after all these things has been discussed, when we are going for the 5th unit, we discussed about the other type of resources. The major other type of resources what we have is the ocean energies is considered, ocean energies, ocean part. Next, after that, we have discussed about the wave, tidal energies we have discussed. We have discussed about the wind energies we have discussed, tidal energies, wind energies we have discussed. And after that, we have discussed about the geothermal, right? So after the geothermal energies we have discussed, and next we started discussing about the hydrogen productions, fuel cells, and the last chapter. This way we have discussed all. So we have seen the tidal, we have seen the waves, then we have discussed about the geothermal. After the geothermal part is over, we have discussed about the remaining 2 things, hydrogen productions, fuel cells, and this. So this way the total topics, whatever we have discussed in the total 5 units. Okay. In the next coming class, we are going to discuss especially about the question bank, the questions, important questions which was appeared in the previous question papers. From the Monday onwards, each day I'm going to discuss about one particular unit, please. Okay. So please, when we are coming for the next two sessions, please come with your question bank so that the important questions you can able to take it very easily now. Right? If anybody is having any doubts, please raise it.